Hey up everybody, welcome back to the Audio Cycling YouTube channel, where today we're going to be taking a look at the VELOGAMES Criterium du Dauphine. I've left it a little bit later than usual just to be sure that all the rider lists are up to date and stuff, but there is of course one overwhelming favourite going into this race, and that is of course the most expensive rider, and that is Jonas Vingegaard, who is 26 credits. To be honest with you, I think that Jonas is the favourite and he is probably going to win, barring any accident or illness. So I think that Jonas is sort of a must-have pick. I expect lots of people to be having him. So I think that Jonas is the sensible choice, considering that there is a 30-ish kilometre time trial midway through the race as well, and he is by far the best time trialist out of all the GC contenders. So I do think that Jonas is a must-have pick. Adam Yates, probably kind of like a second or third favourite in terms of GC. I think that he is probably going to finish on the podium as well. His time trialling is quite good, not as good as Jonas's, but still quite good. And I think that he could certainly maybe win a stage or two, especially maybe on the last day, which is quite a steep finish. I think that perhaps Yates is really good on the steep stuff, perhaps on an equal level to Jonas, so we'll wait and see what happens there. But he is quite expensive at 20 when you consider that there are other options for GC who might do a very similar job but are perhaps a little bit cheaper, who you could go with instead. Carapaz and Martinez definitely fulfill that sort of bracket of rider. Carapaz of course won the other day, but it wasn't against the most brilliant of competition. However, a win is a win, and that does provide a certain level of confidence to him, especially considering that his time at EF hasn't been the best so far. He hasn't been getting the results that everybody's been expecting him to get coming from the Ineos Grenadiers, so maybe he's turned a new leaf. We'll wait and see, but I'd be perhaps, well, I don't know, because then you've also got Martinez, who, let's face it, this year has only really done well in the Volta Algarve, and outside of that he's been a little bit missing really. They both have question marks over them. I think that Martinez is a tad safer just because he has a better time trial compared to Carapaz, so I'd be leaning towards Martinez out of the two of those. For 16 credit riders, you've got some good ones. Gaudu, Jorgensen, Mas, O'Connor and Rodriguez. All these guys are good GC contenders, and at this point you sort of end up at riders who are very much on a very similar level, very similar in terms of price, and very similar in terms of potential to get points in the race. The ones that you choose is really down to your personal judgment, but I'll provide my 2 cents on it. You know, Gaudu I think is a good one, considering that at Paris-Nice, the other big French stage race that we've seen him compete in this year, he did really well. He was actually beating Jonas there. Of course, I think he was 14 credits there, so 16 credits here is only a small price increase, and I think that he is still worth it. His TT isn't great, but it's still not bad. It's on a very similar level, I think, to, you know, everyone else in this sort of bracket of GC riders, and he actually places relatively well in sprint finishes. Think back to, I think it was Basque Country where Edith Schelling won. Gaudu seems to be quite good at the reduced sprints where he positions himself quite well, could accidentally pick up some top 10s as a consequence of that. Jorgensen and Mas, that's a different one. These two, of course, both leaders in Movistar. I'd probably say don't pick Mas, just based upon history. Mas has done the Dauphiné, Tour and Vuelta, that combination, for the last 3 years, and every time he's done the Dauphiné he hasn't done well. That's not making me feel too confident about picking Mas, to be honest with you. Jorgensen's different. I think Jorgensen's he's stepped up a lot this year, and he did really good at Romandy, and I think that it'll be interesting to see, considering that there are rumours that he is going to be moving away from Movistar. So how's that dynamic going to play out? I'm not too sure, so therefore I'm most likely to just avoid Movistar altogether. Ben O'Connor hasn't looked so good this year, but he does tend to go well in the Dauphiné. He did finish 3rd here last year, so that is a good sign, and hopefully he is just one of these riders who peaks really well for this time of year. So I think O'Connor's still a good one. Rodriguez as well, one of these ones who hasn't had the best year so far, but he is a good time trialist, and you know, if Martinez doesn't hit the mark, then it could certainly be Rodriguez. He'll be competing for the white jersey as well. So I think Rodriguez is good too. Alaphilippe, weird one. Just because we haven't seen much of Alaphilippe this year, to be honest with you, and therefore I'm probably not going to pick him, just because I'm just not feeling that confident in Alaphilippe at the moment. It's not like years gone by where Alaphilippe would be one of the first people in the team. I'm waiting to see a good result from him before I go picking him again. I'm not willing to gamble 14 credits on a rider who I'm not sure is going to be doing well. Hater just stresses me out whenever I put Hater on my team because he's always at the back of a peloton. But in theory, he is a good rider for this race. There should be 3-ish bunch, like reduced sprints. There's a time trial as well. So in theory, Hater is a very good choice. However, we saw at Romandy, sometimes he doesn't execute on sprints very well. Could it be better to pick a different sprinter who's perhaps better at positioning, who has a bit more of a team around them for the sprints? Hater doesn't really have anyone apart from Ben Turner, so bear that in mind before you go picking Hater. I am a person who picks Hater an awful lot. I am a serial Hater picker, but I'm not certain about it this time. Hindley, bit of a cheaper GC option if you want it. There's also Lander in this bracket as well. Of the two, I'd actually favour Lander. I think that Hindley is a slightly better time trialist, but Lander's just looks so good this year. His lowest GC position in a stage race is 7th. I think that Lander's got a bit more consistency about him. Hindley, usually not as great in the stage races, does a lot better in the Grand Tours. So perhaps might be a really good pick for the Tour, but maybe for the Dauphiné, I might hold off on picking Hindley. 12 credit riders, Ciccone, we'll see if he's recovered from COVID, because of course he was going to go to the Giro. I do think that if he has recovered well, he will be a guy who's finishing in the top 10 in this race for sure. Lenny Martinez is quite expensive at 12, considering that he'll just be a domestique for Gaudu more than likely. Max Poole, very expensive now. He was quite cheap at Romandy, but now he's up to 12, and I think that's just maybe a little bit too much for my liking, considering that there are so many GC riders who will likely be doing better than he is. Zongler's a cool one too. He's looked strong recently as well. Should be getting involved in the sprints, probably 3 stages that he'll compete in. Is that enough for you to go picking him, considering that you've got guys like Christophe Laporte, who's cheaper than Zongler and just as fast? You know, that's just a debate. We'll get onto Laporte just in a second. Bennett and Groenewegen and just any other pure flat sprinter I wouldn't be picking, because they'll only really contest stage 3. It's just not worth it, guys, unless you're really planning on picking up some Gregarios for that kind of subcategory of the VELOGAMES leaderboards, then by all means go with them. But in terms of pure point scoring capabilities, I would be picking somebody else. Bernal, I don't know, to be honest with you. I would like to be optimistic and say pick him because he's going to do really well, but I just don't have that faith. Haig, I won't pick. He's coming off the Giro. Tobias Hall and Johannesson hasn't looked that great. He couldn't even win the Tour of Norway, for goodness sake. So I'm not really feeling that either. Laporte, I think, is a really good one. Should have his own freedom, I think, because this is one of the first races where Laporte's taking part in a stage race and Wout van Aert isn't here. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do. I think he could pick up a stage. He is currently the bookies' favourite to win stage 1. He'll also get assist points from Jumbo-Visma Team GC, but also Jonas's GC. I just think that Laporte's a really good choice for 10. And then Latour, Madouas, Guillaume Martin, Vernon. Not really liking many of those, because Madouas will be a domestique, let's face it. Latour, possibly, if he's on one of those fantastic Pierre Latour kind of periods of form, then maybe he finishes inside the top 10, but not very likely. And Vernon has got the same issue that Groenewegen and Bennett have, in that he'll be dropped very quickly. Going on to the 8-point riders, Abrastori. Badjoli is quite a cool one if Alaphilippe's not hitting the mark, but again, he's got a kind of... There's like Alaphilippe, there's Vernon, there's Badjoli, there's Van Zevenant. Where do all the quick-step riders fit into this? I'm not too sure. I would be inclined to not pick him at all. Cavagna will do well in the 1TT, but outside of that, I'm not really too sure. Chavez did really good in this race last year. It's very easy to forget that. I think he finished in 6th place in GC, but is he going to do that again this year? He very well could do. He could launch a bit of a surprise, but he might more than likely be a domestique for Carapaz. Krausweg, I think, is kind of cool at 8. I think that's quite a cheap price for him, considering that if Jonas dropped out of GC, Krausweg would probably have free reign and could finish as either top 10. Louis Mienquez will lose too much time in the TT more than likely. Milan Menton I do like as a sprinter in this category. I do also like Matteo Trentin as well for that. More versatile sprinters will compete in more stages than a Bennett and a Groenewegen will. So I'd probably say that Menton is a really good value sprinter. But there is somebody else on Lotto Destiny who I really like as well, who I'll get onto in a second. Oscar Onley as well, good GC rider, but again, how's him and Max Poole? How are they going to work this out? I'm not too sure. But the rider I want to talk about is Maxime Van Hils, who I think is going to be a really good choice for a lot of teams, because when you look at the stage profiles, which I've got up here, If Menton doesn't make any of these sprints, then Van Hills is going to be sprinting, which I think is, that's quite good, considering that these stages could be raced quite aggressively, especially stage 1 and stage 2. I think that Menton could get dropped and maybe Van Hills takes over. The other benefit of Van Hills, strangely enough, is that his time trialling isn't that great, so he'll lose time on stage 4 and could go in the breakaways for stages 5, 6, 7 and 8. Again, another good possibility there. He's also a puncher, so stage 5 and stage 6 look really suited to him. Maybe he'll do a little bit of a GC job and finish top 15 in GC if he can hang on stages 7 and 8. But we'll just have to wait and see. So I think that Van Hills has got a good potential to score quite a few points. Van Poppel you could pick, possibly, but he'll be a lead-out man. But he is more versatile than Bennett, so might hang on longer. Van Zevenant hasn't looked that great. Fred Wright as well, a good all-rounder. We'll probably get a couple of top 10s to be more than likely. 6 credit riders. There are some which are good, but none of them are particularly outstanding. But we'll just go through and pick the ones which I like. Bouchard, if O'Connor doesn't do well. Brenner's looked decent recently, but will likely get dropped in GC. Charmig might go for the KOM classification. They also have Jonas Glegard, who won the KOM classification in Paris-Nice. He's also a 6 credit rider if you wanted to go with him as well. You also have Dorian Godon, who won Brabant-Sipel, so a bit of a versatile sprinter, and I think could certainly compete in the sprints. You've got the Intermarché conundrum of Rune Hellerhotz, Maddis Michels and Hugo Page. Of course, Hugo Page, in my opinion, had that breakout performance at the Dauphiné last year where I think he got like 3 top 10s in sprint, and I think that he could do the same this year. But they also have Maddis Michels, who finished 4th place in a sprint in the Tour of Norway, and Rune Hellerhotz is pretty fast in a sprint too. I just don't know who they're going to be going with. You could really kind of gamble and just pick one of them and hope that they're the correct one, but it might be safer to go with somebody like Juanpe Lopez as a bit of an outside GC choice instead, or Lionel Tamino, because he will be the sprinter for Alpecin, but he'll only really compete in stage 3. You've got Tesfazion, who left for Giro early, but a puncher, good choice there. Tolias Tlein, who finished 2nd in a stage in Tour of the Alps behind Gregor Muhlberger, finished 10th in GC there. Attila Volta is probably my favourite 6 credit rider because I think he'll probably finish top 20 in GC, look good at Tour of Norway. He'll probably be like second to last man for Jonas as well, get the assist points. I think that Volta's a pretty safe one to be going with, as are Van Baarle and Van Hooijdonk if you just wanted the assist points. And then 4 credit riders. Versnes has done well in some one-day races this year, including Paddy Camembert, so he could get in some breakaways or contest in some reduced sprints. Eddie Finet did good in Trobro-Lyon, I think it was, so maybe he might get his own freedom in this race, but he might be working for Axel Zongler more than likely. I think the best 4 credit rider is Sean Quinn. Remember last year he finished 3rd in that sprint on the opening stage. I think that he's probably the best 4-point rider. I think a lot of people will be picking him, so I'd probably say, yeah, that he's the safest one. Nons Peters is a breakaway rider. Ivo Oliveira did good in a prologue. I think he won a prologue at the 4 Days of Dunkirk or something like that. It was a French stage race that's been on pretty recently. Marcus Houligaard, sprinter for Trek, but hasn't looked too great recently. And then outside of that, you're looking at maybe Sweeney for breakaways. That's kind of it for the 4 credit riders and all the riders. So this is the team that I've got right now. I might do a separate video where I'll talk about my team, but just quickly talking through them. We've got 3 GC riders in Vingegaard, Gaudu and Danny Martinez. Kind of an outside guy in Van Hills. Sprinter in Laporte and maybe Sean Quinn. And then you've also got... Oh, I forgot to mention about Chris Harper. Chris Harper I like as a 6 credit rider. Jayco Seve, in their press release, that he's going to be trying to go for a top 10. I think realistically that'll be a top 15, but I think that's still quite good for a 6 credit rider. Volta as well for the assist points. I'm going to go on Rune Hellerhotz just because I've got a good feeling about him. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Are you going to go with Jonas or not with Jonas? And if you aren't going with him, then who are you thinking of picking instead? Because that would be quite an interesting topic to discuss. Do you think Sean Quinn's the best 4 credit rider? Etc, etc, etc. Put it all in the comments down below. And all there's left to say is to stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Salut!